So with that being said, moving on to segment 2. And Epstein did not kill himself. We are talking the emperor lacking clothes in the concept of, or within the context of, the president being just a figurehead. And obviously Biden serves as the foil, as he is the current president. But it's a particular thing about Biden, which is really demonstrating this point that we want to call your attention to.
Can I add a little context to this?
You can. I'll allow it.
Bear in mind. Oh, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen of this supposed jury. What I will say is, let's not forget, I know it's really easy because there's a lot of kerfuffle nowadays. Let's not forget, in the Dems' panic to get some leverage of impeachability, would that even be is that a word? Did I just invent that?
I'll allow that as well.
Okay, thank you, Constable. Your Honor.
Whether it's a word or not, it's allowed.
Okay. They were coming at every angle at Trump to try to find something they could get him on. But he's like the Teflon Don trying to nail Jell-O to a wall. You're never going to get it. You know what I mean? But one of their angles was they said that he should be impeached because he's not mentally suitable for the job, because they believed that he had, what were they saying that he had? Alzheimer's? Because he would lean forward and he spoke in grandiose terms but didn't have really anything to say. You know, those kind of subjective things that you can kind of attribute to any person over a given age. So with all of that being said, Dane, I hand it over to you. I posit to you, prove to me more that Biden is more cognitively diminished than Trump was.
Well, I mean, I choose not to even try to make that case because I choose to live in reality where I think most people live. Even the people who think Biden is doing a great job, and we'll get to more of that in a second.
Bless your
Even
heart.
to the people who think that Trump is, and sincerely and honestly hold the belief that Trump is Hitler reincarnate. Even those people, I think if you got them to just sit down and have a beer with you and just say, take the politics out of it, just look at the man.
Or a kombucha.
Just listen to the man. Do you honestly think that that man has the cognitive ability to run the most powerful nation on earth? Presuming that, you think that the president has that sort of authority in his office, regardless of whether it's constitutional or not quibbling about that. Do you think that with that much power, he has the cognitive ability to stay on top of everything and get it done? Now, he'll tell you all up and down 60 Minutes that he does.
He did, and he fumbled over that as well.
But again, I think if you're being honest and trying to be as objective as humanly possible, setting aside your biases for or against the guy, you got to admit he's not all there. But the thing that I think is his lack of cognitive ability is really a blessing in disguise. Because, listen, when you are a libertarian and most people hate you or think you're kind of weird or an outlier or whatever, and most people can find a reason to disagree with you, whether they're left or right, you have to kind of build a thick skin, and you have to look for silver linings wherever you can find them. And I think that the silver lining of Biden being president and having that diminished cognitive capacity is, whether he wants to or not, he's ripping off the mask and dispensing with all pretense for those people who still believe that this quote unquote democracy elects the president, and then the president, operates on behalf of the American people who elected him. Because again, even if he wanted to, he just can't pull it off. He doesn't have the mental capacity for it. Now, as libertarians, as anybody who has a skeptical eye towards the state constantly growing and expanding in power all the time, as we always say, is that it seems rather weird that regardless of who gets as the Tom Woods rule of thumb is that no matter who you elect, you always wind up with John McCain. How is it that Republican or Democrat or any variation thereof, no matter who the president is, there's always more war, there's always more handouts to the big corporate connected cronies, there's always more regulation, there's always more everything? How would that be with these presidents that are seemingly diametrically opposed, if not for a permanently entrenched bureaucracy that none of us have any say in voting in or out, actually running the show. Now, if you're more of the Trump mindset, you would call this the deep state, but you need not invoke that imagery to just say, yeah, it's rather strange that Obama and George W. Bush are supposed to be completely different, and yet they wound up with the same policies in effect, definitely in terms of the war machine. How does that happen, if not for the fact that this permanently entrenched bureaucracy is really running the show and not the guy who's elected?
Well, and you don't really need to look any further than just the money in politics. Like, money and politics go hand in hand like a piss and a fart. Like, you can't really separate either one of them. So it's a tough pill to swallow when you realize that like you said, does your vote really count? And you're saying it over and over. Like, my vote counts. I get a say in my government. I get a say in which direction my country goes. But when you come down to the brass tacks of it, like, do you? Does your money carry more of a vote? Where you put it carry more of a vote than your actual vote? Your direct pen on paper, I want this for my country. Which is a powerful thing if you think about it. Where you put your money in this country, where you choose to put your body, where you choose to put your onus, where you choose to live, all these things, you make decisions every day and it predicts where this country goes. So, with that being said, our destabilized president in office right now, placating the masses that he is in charge, if you ask somebody in a cold, dark room with nobody else around, no mics, no cameras, no nothing, do you really think that he's okay? I bet you fucking over at least 70% of America would say, no, I don't think he's okay.
Right. Only the most diehard,
well, the religious cult. We'll just call them the radical left. If they're willing to terrorize the MAGA right, they're the radical left. They're the terrorist on the left. So, again, like, just
to use Biden's words, not
to use Biden's word. Heaven forbid I use our own words, because we'll get kicked off of this platform wherever you're watching us. There,
it's nice knowing you, folks.
But that's the here's your wake up call. Here's you becoming an adult. If this is the first time you've ever heard it, let me reiterate: your money and your choices day to day have more of a weight of vote than your actual vote does on election day.
Right, and here's the Epstein moment. I'll just give just a couple examples of this happening all throughout American history, because this is not a new phenomenon. There was the example of Woodrow Wilson getting elected in 1916, in large part on a campaign of he kept us out of war in Europe, so, give him a second term. And then he gets elected in 1916 and boom, right off the war, America goes. Or FDR saying that he was going to remain neutral as things were starting to heat up leading up to World War II, but was pushing Lend-Lease to the extent that he was just trying to antagonize the Axis powers up to and including the ultimate bombing at Pearl Harbor, which then drew the American people in. Or what about an alleged political outsider like Ronald Reagan, who said all of the things about limited government and I'm going to correct this growing leviathan that's happening in DC, and yet he walks out of office in 1988 with larger deficits than any president in history. Or how about George W. Bush, who campaigned on what he called, quote, compassionate conservatism. He was going to go around the world and basically, kind of massage democracy here, there, or whatever. But he was going to kind of pull back on the America empire and stuff like that after the bad taste of the Clinton administration using NATO in Bosnia. And, George W. Bush says, I'm not going to do that anymore. Lo and behold, the war on terror. And then you have Obama, who campaigns on hope and change. He's going to change all of the things about the George W. Bush administration that a lot of people were very upset about, not the least of which the Iraq War. And then Obama comes into office and becomes the droner-in-chief and expands the war on terror and makes it more clandestine all around the world, et cetera, et cetera. And so what this brief trot across history should amply demonstrate to you is that all throughout American history, the nominal figurehead of the United States government, the president, is not in control. And yes, the bureaucracy is more entrenched and tougher to dig out today than it was at the turn of the 20th century when Woodrow Wilson was president. But the fact remains the same, is that you don't get a vote for these people. And these people are calling the shots. How would all of those different presidents that I just mentioned to you, with vastly different views of the world, vastly, at least according to what they campaigned on, vastly different principles, et cetera, how does it always wind up being that the policies push in the direction of more power to the government, more money to the war machine, more handouts to the politically corrected cronies, more of a power and financial gap between those individuals and the American people who they allegedly represent? And yet you get no say in most of the shot callers behind the scenes.
And if you think we're being tin hatty right now, just remember in 2016, when they elected Trump?
Yes.
Okay. Who won the Democratic Party nomination?
Hillary.
Who won it?
Oh, Bernie.
Bernie won the nomination. But then they skirted the nomination and put Hillary in place anyway. So your mind has already been made up. And they did that in front of everyone and didn't really have to explain it away.